Hi, this is Prague Talk, a podcast from Radio Prague International. My name is Ian Willoughby. In this episode, my guest is the Czech photographer Bet Orten. She studied fashion photography in London after a stint as an assistant to a well-known celebrity photographer in New York. But for the last decade and a half, Bet, whose Instagram profile describes her as a female photographer taking pictures of other females, has been living here in her native Prague. And I spoke to Bet Orten for this edition of Prague Talk. My first question, where does your name come from, Bet Orten?
It's sort of a story behind that. Well, my original first name is Alžběta, which obviously in English will probably translate to Elizabeth. So when I moved abroad and I started to study in London, it didn't seem to me quite appropriate that, people call me Elizabeth, related to the Queen very much and so on. Not that I wouldn't feel that way, but, So I just decided to make this sort of a short version of it, which, in American English would probably be Betty, which some people used to call me when I would travel to the States. And then I just decided, and I really didn't like that. So then the English way would be Beth, and I didn't like that way either. So then Bet, that was it. And I still love it, actually. It's the favorite, version of my name. And then Orten, so Jiří Orten, the famous Czech poet, he was the cousin of my grandfather. So the original family name was Ornstein, and he also turned it into his sort of a nickname for his poems, and I really love that. So I really took it as my own.
Photography, what was it that first brought you to the whole world of photography?
Well, I started very young, actually. I think I was only about 12 years old when I first found this very old camera. It was probably some 35 millimeter analog. I don't even know what brand was it. And it was in our house somewhere hidden in some closet. And apparently it was probably grandfather's camera. And I was pretty much fascinated with the object. So, someone explained to me how it probably should work. You need to buy a film. So I bought some black and white film. I tested it. There was nothing on the film, of course. It probably, the camera was just broken, I guess. But I love the process very much. I actually remember nearly every second of taking pictures on that camera. I was just fascinated by that. And then I waited, you would probably wait like a week for the film to be processed. And I even loved that, like the waiting part. And and then I was like, okay, this is very interesting.
And at what point did you start feeling you had a talent for it, or at least feel that it was the area for you?
So I started to take pictures. My mother brought me my first camera, analog, and I just started to take pictures, buy films. I had my little dark room in our house and so on. And then I did this. It was sort of like a tiny exhibition in front of the principal's cabinet, or like
Office,
it was in the hallway of our school. And we had this teacher for like art history. It was still elementary school, and it was really like kind of a vernissage, or it was probably connected with something else as well, but my pictures were in the hallway. And she said something like, well, I think we see this like developing talent here, and I just in that moment I was like, yeah, I feel that too.
Well, it's always great to have someone like that who will encourage you at the right age.
Yeah, and I felt actually horrible in all other subjects and everything. I was always having very bad grades, and I was sort of naughty and doing all the bad stuff everyone shouldn't do and so on. So that moment was really like she really enforced me to. Or like empowered me in that sense.
And who are the photographers who you most admire, or are there any who you feel influenced by?
It's more of not that I would be only influenced by the photographs they actually create, but sometimes it's more of the story, that comes with the person, of their life, of the way how they, treated themselves on the way to, to become great photographers. So probably that would be Nan Golden, American one. Sally Mann, also American photographer. And then, of course, some of the great Czech names like Josef Koudelka or Libuše Jarcoviakova, which I admire very much. So, yeah, probably these.
I know you did some work experience in New York and you also studied in London. Which of those came first?
New York was first, yeah. It was a total coincidence, actually, because I was called from some film productions. They called me if I'm free in some particular week, and they were looking for this position called like a local assistant because they knew I have good English, or they knew I could speak English, and so they called me for this photo shoot to assist to an American photographer, and I spent a week working with this big American team, very fascinated by this. And yes, so I asked, well, guys, if I come to New York, can I work for you? And they were like, yeah, of course. We won't give you, any money. We won't give you any food. Sometimes maybe you will work hard, even on weekends. Are you still in? I'm like, yeah, totally. So yeah, then I flew in, I think it was September, and I stayed about 6 months.
And you worked with Stephen Klein, who is
him.
known, or was known at least, for his work with major stars. Did you get much kind of a view into that world of celebrities?
Yeah, pretty much, actually. We shot Bono Vox, Damien Hirst, I remember, many American actresses. And I was really hoping to see Madonna, but then they actually flew to London and they wouldn't take me with them, unfortunately.
And he worked with Madonna repeatedly?
Like many times. So I really hoped I'll see her. And also, the other, like, not that famous names for, like, not the stars, but like stars within the fashion world. So I get to meet Grace Coddington, which was still is, I think, the fashion editor for American Vogue. This, like, really amazing woman. And, I had my 10 minutes of, we had a little chat. We, exchanged some jokes, and I'm really still quite amazed I could have, lived that.
So I guess after that, then you studied in London. You were there for several years. Yes.
So it was still in New York, when I realized my most favorite areas where I would find myself would be, these tiny little cafes hidden somewhere in like Greenwich, or then even more, Brooklyn and places like this. So then I was like, well, I guess it's more, the places that remind me of Europe. And yeah, and there I really very much realized my heart is so European, and I just needed to go back. So, but I knew, or back then, I thought I will not be able to live in Prague. So yeah, and London was always the place I wanted to go. It was my major dream since I was quite little, actually, since like the first time I visited London. And yeah, so I found the University of Arts had one of the colleges, which was London College of Fashion, and had the master degree program, which was fashion photography. So I applied and then traveled there, obviously, for the exams, and they accepted me.
When you say that you couldn't see yourself living in Prague, how come you ended up living in Prague?
That's a good question. I question myself sometimes, but of course I know the answer. So it was the second year of my master's when I find out that I'm pregnant. And yeah, and I just knew, it was sort of a breaking moment of my life, obviously. And I still stayed in London a couple months after that, but then realized it's no way, because I was alone, the partner wasn't present, and my mom helped me big time, or my family in general, of course. And yeah, and then going back home was the option. And then I met my life partner, who's my husband now, and I stayed.
And how did having a kid or kids, you have 2 kids?
Yes, I have 2 kids now.
How did that affect your work, or did it affect your work?
Oh, massively, yeah. Well, first of all, I think even, giving a labor to my first son, I have a son and a daughter, it changed me a lot. And then becoming a mother, and having all that experience, which is just like life-changing, of course, in many senses. We would be here probably for a long time if we just discussed the motherhood part. I think it really changed me in the sense of, I don't know, I guess being more humble towards life and not like really fighting with it, and sometimes just like go with the flow. And yeah, so I'm extremely happy where I am right now with it.
But as for your work though, did it mean it was harder to do projects, or
of course,
you could achieve a bit less than you might have wanted to at that time?
Yeah, of course. That bit was extremely hard for me, and with that part, I must admit, I did fought for some time, because it was still this like bit of the artist ego that wanted more and kind of felt sorry, that, all the opportunities that I'm missing on, and that I cannot be in London anymore, and that I cannot do, particular jobs and so on. But seeing it, from the perspective of 40-year-old woman now, and, all what motherhood brought me, all the topics, and I also have a daughter now, which also changed my perspective on many things. I think I was just supposed to wait. And that was, that's something you don't want to hear when you're 25, and that was the age when I had my first child, is this patience word. You just hate it, or I used to hate it. So, yeah.
And as for your work, what's the main focus of your work? You do commissions and fashion photography, is that correct?
Well, not really, actually. I sort of left fashion photography, even though I love fashion photography still, and I believe it's it's subject of art photography for sure. That's that's what you can see mainly abroad, or you see it like Stephen Klein we mentioned is really an artist. But through the time, more and more, the actual fashion was really bothering me more and more in the actual pictures. So I started to kind of like create my own costumes, or I co-work with costume designers who we create the costumes actually together. So it's not a particular fashion. And so I do get to do some commissions from time to time, but very rarely. It really has to be either a brand or a designer or someone who we have some connection and we like to work together. And then it's mainly like my own projects, and my main focus is women.
Well, your Instagram profile says you're a female photographer taking pictures of other females. Why did that become such an important part of your work for you?
I guess because I'm really into the female experience, which there is so much I still want to explore and ask, and I want to see how other women live. And I have so many questions around that, how to deal with life when you want to be a mother, if you don't want to be a mother. Yeah.
So is it kind of a way for you to spend time with interesting women?
As well, I guess. Yeah, I guess so. Yeah, that's right. It's probably, it's also that I have my new studio now where I want to invite as many women as I can. My shoots, or if it's sometimes like just a portrait, it starts with an interview, obviously, And so it's probably that I'm really interested in them. Not that I wouldn't be interested in men, but I feel like, the last centuries were all about men. Sorry for that, but, so I do feel I need to question women more now.
How is it different if a woman photographs a woman from if a man photographs a woman?
I will answer this in my PhD one day, because I think it's like I get to find out that the answer is so complex, and I'm really into like digging deeper, and I think it will be like a PhD thesis for that.
Well, maybe you could comment on one thing. I've seen you saying in the past that you had the impression that some women would take photographs of other women, but for men.
Because as a female photographer, or as a woman photographer, also, back in the days, let's say, 90s, early 2000s, it was still very much, male environment. And to get to in this male environment, your work to, get the attention or be respected by men, you either go to war and become a war photographer, some could do that. But then if you take pictures of women, you sort of, objectify them, and you take off their clothes, you show their, naked bodies, but you show them with this, like, it's this male gaze kind of perspective, because, like, unless you love women as you're probably a lesbian or something, I don't really, I cannot, see myself being to take pictures of women in, this particular way. So probably that.
I must say, I hate nude photography. I think it's crap. I think it's old-fashioned. It reminds me of something from like the 70s or maybe the 30s.
Oh, yeah.
Why are people doing it today?
When you asked about my favorite photographers, there's one, it's also American. His name is Ryan McGinley. I really love his work. Absolutely, I adore it. And he also did a bit of fashion, but like his main like beginnings in the scene were like skateboarding and this kind of scene. But he's gay, but he started to take pictures of his friends, guys, girls, in the wild, in the nature, and they were always naked, but it was never objectified. It was like there is a naked body of a human being, and it's like part of the environment, part of the nature or something, but it was never obscene, or it was never even sexualized. I really recommend to see this, because it really sort of changed my perspective on like the nudes. But otherwise, when I was on the exams to get to FAMU, you have like 3 exams to do, and one of them is nude photography. Of course, it can be men as well, but I wouldn't really understand why. So yeah, so I took some pictures of naked women, and I just hated it, and I didn't understand why.
Getting away from gender.
Yes.
What makes somebody photogenic? Can you see somebody on the street or on the tram and say that person's photogenic, or do you need to look through a lens?
No, you need to look. I need to look through a lens. I study people's faces. If I travel in the in the transport in the city, sometimes I probably stare at people even, but I'm just fascinated by that, and I'm even like really fascinated by the actual photogenicness of people. And when I don't know someone and he's the first time in front of my camera, it takes a bit of a time for me, because I need to see the face or even the body from certain angles. But I'm 100% sure that everybody's photogenic. It's just, that some people only have like a one angle that really all of a sudden it all kind of matches. And then, then models, they have like 50 angles.
But is there something about simpleness of face that is connected to being photogenic? There was some experiment where they wanted to examine what was a good-looking person. And they took, 500 photos of people considered good-looking, men and women. And in both cases, they made a photo composite. And the resulting picture in both cases was a picture of essentially of a baby with big eyes and a clear face, symmetrical and so on. And I wonder if that is connected with being photogenic.
Probably. It's like bigger eyes, bigger lips, probably, a certain shape of the face where you see more of the bones, or I don't know. But then not really. It's more, obviously, what I'm searching more like in the picture is the character of the person. So that's what I follow. But then obviously, and it's not, of course, just some like random beauty. But then what I learned as well is, which is very interesting. So if someone has like a, really outstanding nose, or like really big nose, let's say, and tight lips, or then the photography actually makes it even worse. So that's one thing to deal with. But then, no, again, I say, I think everybody's can be beautiful.
Obviously, technology is moving very fast. Many people in many fields are worried about what it's doing to their area of work. Are there any ways in which you feel photography is in some way threatened by technology?
There are many discussions on this topic right now, but me personally, I'm not threatened at all, because, well, part of what I do and the way I do it is the actual process of taking the picture, which is it's not only about the outcome, but for me, the actual, it's sort of like even like sort of a performance, or not that I would need to perform in front of someone, but for me and for my team, we always want to enjoy it. And we're always a bit on the edge, if because of the weather, because of, other circumstances. And even the photograph people, they actually really like it. And this is something, you will take from them if I can say, okay, you use the AI to do somebody's portrait, but how boring is that? You can go in the, wild nature and be standing on rocks and, wind in your face. I mean, that's an experience.
You teach. What is the main thing that you want to communicate to your students when you're teaching?
So what I see is that people who already went through some, photography experiences, they tend to, follow certain rules, and they're very much afraid to kind of break the rules. And then you can't really, be free and really create. So what I see as my major work in that sense is to kind of tell them, okay, forget everything you've learned. I mean, it's fine, the technical aspect is important, but first of all, find some subject that you will just love and you will want to follow. And then, the rest will come, and just follow that and forget about all these, composition, rules and all that. So it's probably this.
A final question. You have some exhibition coming up. Is that the case?
Yes, my exhibition is coming this spring. I'm now very much in all the preparation process now. And I can't wait to invite my fans and whoever likes my work, and even the ones that don't know my work yet, to come.
Where is it going to be?
It's going to be in Chemistry Gallery in Hollerschwitze.
Many thanks indeed to Bet Orten, whose photography is well worth checking out online if you don't know it. Prague Talk is a podcast from Radio Prague International, and if you're new to the pod and enjoyed my chat with Bet, why not look up some of the earlier conversations in the series and subscribe wherever you get podcasts. But that's all for now from me, Ian Willoughby. Thank you so much indeed for listening to Prague Talk, and talk to you again very soon.